Welcome back to another wonderful Wednesday here on Sarah's English Club. Last week, one of our Instagram followers here, Javad, asked me, Sarah, what's the difference between an idiom, a phrasal verb, an expression, and slang? This is a great question because this is what I teach you every week. Idioms, phrasal verbs, and expressions. Now, this isn't an easy question to answer because an idiom might also be considered an expression, and a phrasal verb might also be part of an idiom and an expression, so they kind of all weave together, okay? It's not like an idiom is only one thing, an expression only one thing, phrasal verb only one thing. No, it doesn't really work like that. In today's video, I'm going to explain certain characteristics that an idiom has, certain characteristics that a phrasal verb has, and certain characteristics that an expression has. So it'll be easier for you to understand how they are different, but also how they are so similar. Why does English have to be so difficult? Don't worry, I am here to help you feel more comfortable and confident speaking English and understanding the difference between these phrases that I use all the time, every week. Okay, so an idiom. An idiom is a group of words that have a meaning that's different from the individual words in a group. For example, last week I taught you the idiom to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Each word and phrase has a different meaning in this idiom, right? To see the light at the end of the tunnel. All of these words, phrases, have an individual meaning. But when we put them together as a whole and we see the whole idiom as one big chunk of language, it has a completely different meaning. Now, if I told you, oh, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we are underground and we are actually in a real tunnel, then that's not an idiom. It's not being used in an idiomatic way. It's very literal. But as you learned last week, this is an idiom. It has a different meaning. It doesn't really mean that we're in a tunnel. It could mean that in a certain situation or a circumstance, but typically, most of the time, no, it does not mean that. It means the goodness, happiness, completion that will be at the end of hardship, at the end of a really difficult time. Things finally are starting to look up for you. They're starting to look good and happy for you. 99% of the time, you can't change the words in an idiom. They are what they are. It's like spelling a word. You cannot change the way a word is spelled, right? Because we all agree that's how it's spelled. Same with an idiom. We can't say to watch the light at the end of the tunnel. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't have any meaning. It completely is a different thing or nothing at all. Next, we have phrasal verbs. A phrasal verb is a combination of words that when used together usually take on a different meaning to that of the original verb. They're similar to idioms in the fact that they can be idiomatic. To make a verb a phrasal verb, the verb is typically followed by a preposition, an adverb, or a combination of both. For example, break down, see to, look down on. All of these are examples of phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are used in this sentence in the same way as a verb. Now, one thing that makes phrasal verbs so difficult for English language learners like you is that sometimes they can be separable and sometimes they are inseparable. If a phrasal verb is separable, it means that it can be broken up by other words. Ask out. Ask out is a separable phrasal verb. If a phrasal verb is inseparable, the verb and the preposition or the adverb are glued together. We cannot put another word in between them, just like the idiom. We cannot change the words in the idiom. It just is what it is. For example, run into is an inseparable phrasal verb. If you run into someone on the street, it means that you're walking and then you see the person unexpectedly. I could say, oh, I ran into John on the street today. I cannot say, I ran John into the street yesterday. That's very strange. I wish there was some kind of rule that you could follow to know when a phrasal verb is separable or inseparable. Unfortunately, there's not. You just have to practice. Learn, practice, and use these phrasal verbs. And over time, you'll start to see through examples, through your mistakes, what verbs are separable and which ones are not. Next, we have expressions. An expression is an utterance, a statement, a remark, an interjection, an exclamation. Expressions are often used in conversation to reply to something someone just said. Expressions are often idioms, but what makes them different from an idiom is that an idiom is usually part of a sentence and an expression is usually an utterance. So it is the only thing said. For example, I could say, the dates for her wedding are not yet set in stone. This is an example of an idiom. Now, if two people were having a conversation and Mark said, do you think I need to take an umbrella? And John replied by saying, better safe than sorry. That's an expression. Lastly, slang. Slang. What is slang? Slang is informal language that's commonly used in speech. Slang can be really difficult because it often depends on where you live, what kind of slang you will hear, also what kind of group of people you're around. Different types of people use different types of slang. And a lot of this has to do with the generations. So, for example, someone who is 13, 14, 15 here in the United States uses different slang than I do. If I went into a middle school here in the United States, I probably wouldn't understand a lot of the slang that they are using. I'd have to ask them, what does that mean? Usually we watch pop culture to learn this kind of slang that the younger generations are using. Now, the slang that my parents used was completely different and a lot of times outdated. Slang comes and goes, it becomes popular, and then people don't use it anymore. So it's really, slang has a lot to do with pop culture. I could make a whole other video just on slang, so I don't want to get into it too much today, but I think it's important to know that slang can fall into all of these categories that I taught you today. Slang can be idioms, phrasal verbs, or expressions. Okay, so this is our lesson for today. Thank you all for being here. I am so excited for everything that's about to happen here at Sarah's English Club. This Friday, February 2nd, I'm going to have my second Instagram Live ever. So make sure to be there. It's 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, which is 9 a.m. in Korea and 10 a.m. in Brazil. If you're from another country other than that, just look up the time difference. If you can't make it to the Instagram Live, that's okay. You can always watch it for the next 24 hours. It's going to be so fun, you guys. I'm going to teach you 5 useful slang, phrasal verbs, idioms, expressions that you can use in everyday situations, specifically on social media. We're also going to have a quiz. quiz games. So if you've been following me here on Sarah's English Club, learning the idioms, phrases, and expressions I've been teaching you, then you will do awesome on the quiz. And the best part of it is that I'm launching my membership site on February 5th. And if you make it to the Instagram Live and get all of the quiz questions correct, you will get your first month of the membership completely free. So come on over, don't miss it. I can't wait to see you guys. Bye for now.